says, sorry, something went wrong.
It's your phone, then. Look.
Yeah, must be.
It's trying to go live.
Giddy up.
Looks like we're live.
Sounds good to me.
Oh, baby. Oh, baby. Oh, baby.
I'm going to pretend like we are one way or another. So
we are. So
I've got things like I like to read, but when I go live, I've got like these crazy things that go on my eyes. So I look like a space cadet, like I shouldn't say that, like an alien. So tonight, Facebook Live, blue collar recruiting. Everybody, I want you to go hit that like button, pound that like button, share, and get some people out there. We're gonna have Dan serving some beer tonight. We got a rock star guest tonight that hasn't been on, that I've been communicating with and talking with and messaging with for at least a couple months now about a lot of cool things he's got going on. And I like talking with some of the old timers that have been around since the dinosaurs, the Deb Sardones and Liz Trotters and Derek Christians and stuff like that. This guy is one of the new rock stars coming from the cleaning industry. And Dom, welcome, man. Tell us a little bit about your cleaning business first.
Okay. So for the people that don't know who I am, I'm Dom. I started my cleaning service right at 18 years old, right out of high school. I'm in what we call Central Indiana, so kind of like almost the dead center. So I'm about 40 minutes outside of Indianapolis, Indiana. And I've, over the past 10 years, we've grown the cleaning company to over $1 million in revenue. We've got about 30 employees, and we focus on residential and also have some commercial business too. So yeah.
Great. And so you've got the commercial stuff going. Is that like up going and you're doing okay there with all the craziness going on with the virus and all that stuff?
Yeah, 100%. So a lot of the accounts that we clean for are, factories, banks, government offices, things like that. So all of those places are still functioning and still showing up to work every single day. So if we told them that we couldn't clean their facility no more, they would actually panic because they still have to have it clean, especially during a time like this.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've got about 30 employees. Tell me, so what we're going to talk about tonight, by the way, is assessments.
Yeah.
And automation with that. And one of the things that I always, you and I have talked about this, it's kind of easy, I guess, although we're in a new environment, but even at 2.5% unemployment that we were in the world we lived in about, just 3 months ago, maybe even just a month and a half ago, it was, you could still get good application flow, but a lot of it, I always say with Indeed's like that 16-year-old girlfriend I used to have. I was in love with her, but she always smacked me around and I couldn't stand her at times. But I needed her. That's how Indeed is, right? I needed it. Indeed is like that. Indeed, I hate, but I need them. They're free on a lot of that, good stuff to get application flow and all that. Yep. But it's usually been a problem, not the application flow, but just to go through it all and find the gold nuggets in there. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But with 30 employees, what did you do? Just recruiting wise, real quick. What did you do to recruit in general to find employees? Because that's a lot of employees, and I'm sure there's a little bit of turnover and growth and all that you need to recruit for.
Yeah. Well, there used to be a lot of turnover, and then, we started to, fix our culture and different things like that. But of course, like you mentioned, we use Indeed. Indeed's one of our primary sources. I leverage Facebook a lot. So, people will apply on Facebook, and it's, just like Indeed or any other source, depending on which area you're in, that's kind of depends on how much flow you're going to have from different sources. I know a lot of people that use Craigslist and they say Craigslist is great. However, Craigslist in my area we get even worse candidates than Indeed. So, so we don't use Craigslist, but we utilize Facebook. We definitely utilize Indeed for sure, because like you said, you got to have some flow coming in. And then I use Google Jobs and ZipRecruiter. So those are our main sources where we're getting applicants.
So Dan and I were on this Facebook Live blue collar stuff last Thursday. We're on every Thursday at 9, and we were talking a lot about just being ready for what may or be happening. And with the commercial, and Dan out in Minnesota, you touched on this last week a little bit. There's you're getting better applicants to interview than you ever have, man.
Yeah.
And so Dom, are you seeing the same thing? Because Dan was telling me last week that's where he's at.
Yeah. So the great thing about kind of having a business that's diverse with residential and commercial is we are still hiring. We're still recruiting. We're still, screening applicants, things like that. And with close to what did I see? I think close to 10 million people filed for unemployment within the past 2 weeks. Yeah. So with a number like that, a lot of those people don't want to just sit on unemployment. They are definitely now back in the job market and looking for something, to secure, for income over the next, month or two. Right. And I think that, if you can, find a really good candidate and put them in your company, and if you do already have your culture and stuff in place, you can actually retain them even once their previous employment actually opens back up and says, hey, do you want to come back to work? So yeah, I'm definitely seeing higher quality people that may have never would have thought about applying for my company. And now that, their current job is not considered essential, now they're looking at like, hey, we're looking at different avenues of where we could work. So.
Okay. And you say you're hiring, what's your philosophy on, do you just hire, do you recruit constantly? Is there ever a time you don't recruit with 30 employees, or are you going after it?
Oh, no. We're always recruiting. So, and I look at
ABC. It's the ABC.
Yeah, always recruiting. Yeah. Yeah. I love that term. The thing is though, it's kind of like what we do. And this is kind of how I try to stay, properly staffed, is I always want to have some people, sitting on the bench, right? Nice. So if for any reason, one of my employees wants to quit, or, we got to terminate someone, we don't want to ever feel hindered that we're not going to be able to replace them, quickly. So we always have some people on the bench for sure.
And go ahead, Dan.
I was going to say, Dom, one of the things you had said that stuck with me, and I was in this boat too when we had our maid service in Minneapolis. You had said turnover used to be a big problem. So I'm curious, how long did it take you to recognize that it was maybe more of you than you thought it was, or more of your culture than you thought it was? And what were like the one or two things that you're like, here's what I'm going to do to change this? What was it? What were those things? What was the impact of it?
So it took me a long time, actually. I would say, just off the top of my head, I would say probably 5 years. And then after I realized that, it took me another year to 2 years to actually implement most of the stuff that I want. And then where I find it the most difficult is, even though like that's the culture I want, with 30 employees, we do have, team leads. We have, someone in charge of, doing the, a lot of the HR stuff. We've got the manager stuff. The key to it is not just me understanding the culture I want, but making sure those people that are really like, engaging with the entry-level employees, making sure that they understand the culture that we're trying to push out there. Mm-hmm. So I would say, I've been doing this since 2011, so close to 10 years. I would say it took me about 7 years to really understand that actually I was much more of the problem.
How much? So when we talk about like growing a business, we're always like sales and marketing focused. Mm-hmm. But I think in the cleaning business, especially in the last couple of years, to grow it, you could grow, anything from a sales and marketing perspective. Damn near. Yeah. There's so many clients out there. Yep. How much has your growth been dependent on that culture? Like, did you have a certain growth trend going, and then when you got that culture right, it got like exponential on you, or how did that look?
So I'm glad you asked that, because Sales, first of all, I love sales. Like that's what I am at heart, is just a salesperson. That's what I want to do. I'll sell anything, So what I think I focused on the first 5 to 7 years is all I could do is think about, hey, how can I get my top line revenue up? How can I get my top line revenue up? And I was sacrificing all of like the culture and that stuff. But once I got a stable team, and then I realized, oh, this person's been here a year. This person's been here 2 years. Oh my goodness, they're staying around. What am I doing? Right. Once I started getting that feeling, it actually made me become a better salesperson, because now I was much more confident going out and talking to a customer, or going out to a commercial walkthrough, and they're like, oh, so tell me about your company. I'm like, oh yeah, I can rant all these different things out, and I'm much more confident selling a new account to people, because I'm more confident in the people I'm sending out there.
Yeah, success breeds success, kind of.
But yeah, for sure.
One of the things that was when I first started doing things with Blue Sky Services was our growth strategy was through acquisitions at that time, back in 2016. Right. Mm-hmm. And one of the things with that, to sort of underscore what we're talking about, was the most difficult thing was culture, because you're going in, you're buying a new company with owners that have been there probably for quite a while. They have their certain way of doing things, whether it's successful or not, and it can be very successful, but their culture can be completely different than what the culture is at Blue Sky Services. And we found that out. And I remember talking with one of the owners of Blue Sky Services, and it wasn't Dan, but it was Michael. And I said, Mike, without a doubt, the most difficult thing, and I said it right away, is it's going to take a long time to change the culture. And this was the businesses we bought for are successful businesses, and they did very well. They had great people, but there's still, everybody's got a little bit different culture and expectation on what they need from their people and the leadership it takes. And so one of the things that we're talking about tonight is assessments and figuring out what does that mean? What's assessing somebody? And one of the things that I've always done was, I shouldn't say always, because I learned through some hard knocks, the things that we redid and we revamped and we collected data on and tried to figure out was how to hire people that have management qualities. That I don't want just somebody that can clean a house, which, by the way, is fine, but that's part of the questions that we ask. And we assess. I'm fine if somebody says, and one of our questions that we ask when we assess people or pre-screen them is, do you see yourself as moving up in the company and wanting to manage and maybe run your own location one day? Or do you think you'd be happy just being a cleaning tech, working real hard, customers love you, and you go home? And I love both. Because I love somebody that comes to work every day on time, cleans great, customers love, they go home, and that's it. But I also need and like those that say, no, I want to move up, I want to manage. And so both are great, but I like to figure out who's who, because you got to put the right people in the right seat on the bus. And one of the things I see sometimes is that some owners in all businesses, not just our industry, I saw this years ago at Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and you'd have somebody that was doing really well selling, and all of a sudden they got promoted into a management position, and they were miserable. They were miserable because they didn't like it, number one, and they were horrible at it.
Hey, so Enterprise, did you used to work there, or were you just going there as a customer?
I worked there 30 years ago.
So Enterprise is a really good example because they're family owned, right? Still, even though they're really large. But I see that here in my local Enterprise, everyone is a manager in training.
Right.
Yeah, they're all at least an assistant manager.
Everybody in there is assistant manager. So they really do some empowerment, but they kind of make the manager in training position not so much valuable because everybody in there is that.
And that's exactly right. Now, and it was even more so 30 years ago because they're in every part of the world now. Back when
Yeah.
I was working for them, they were just in the United States.
Yeah.
And, you know, and not everywhere in the United States. So yeah, exactly. But one of the things, you know, I want to go through a couple, getting a little bit granular with some of the questions that we asked. So let me see if I can share my screen here. I don't know here. Doom and doom. All right. So you guys see the screen, I hope. Let me get let me get my old man peepers on here. All right. So one of the things that it took me forever to figure this out, but I would always sit there and go, how is this employee complaining about this thing right now, whatever this thing was? And so I said, man, I wish I had a magic wand where I can see what somebody would complain about before I hired them. And that would be a great thing to know. So I came up with a couple different ideas, and when I say I should smack myself, because it wasn't just me. I had a whole bunch of people help with it.
Hold on, as the co-host, I got to do the thing where I like interject some comments, and before you get too carried away, this is because you're talking about other people here. So Dean Smith, our man, jumped in, and he gave a shout out to Denise. Said she's helping with a ton of applicant flow. They're only dedicating time to their A+ players. And then, so I want to transition that into here's how you're getting them. Here's how you're getting to it.
Beauty. Yeah. And Dean is the man, great veteran military man of the country. And we just signed up another veteran company this morning, Ryan. What's Ryan's last name again?
Edrington, down in Lakeland, Florida.
You got it. Yep, Central Florida. Big time Marine guy. So we love that. That's why you see my background is American flags. So Dean and everybody else, here's some of the questions that we ask. And I think what tends to happen is a lot of companies just kind of are still doing those generic questions that aren't industry specific. I don't care what somebody's strengths and weaknesses are. I don't care about, that's been a question since Moby Dick was a minnow, man. So I'm not interested in that. I want to know more about what you're going to be like when I hire you for a cleaning business or a lawn service or whatever the business is. And so for us, what we did was we sort of set the table. And we talked about this just a second ago. I want to know kind of sometimes who can have some management qualities. So I set the table, if you owned a cleaning company, questions, or whatever your business is. If you owned a cleaning company, because that sets the table where it puts that candidate, that job applicant, in the frame of being a business owner. And so what that uncovers for me is going to be, do you have any management skills? Do you have anything that uncovers if you have any management or leadership skills? And that could be the person, Dom, you're talking about, that, you need to help you with the culture of your company, because everybody says you're the owner. Of course he wants this, and that. But when you have 5 other leaders in your company that are saying, this is what we do here, this is our culture here, not just Dom's culture, this is our culture here, that's a game changer. And some of these questions, search that out in individuals.
I want to do this if we can.
Yeah.
Shawn, what are your, give us your top 2 pre-screening questions, and then Dom, give us your top 2 pre-screening questions. What's like the most impactful thing you find that's like, you already know in advance, if you just looked at those 2 questions, 90% of the time you're going to know who your keeper and your thrower backer is? I've
got 2 right here, and then I'll throw it to you, Dom. One of the things that I like to ask is, out of these 3 things questions, and we've got lots of them, but this one here, which one of these 3 things would upset you the most if you got this job? And there's A, B, or C. The worst answer that we score super low is A. Someone is always late to work and management doesn't do a thing about it. And so what I did when I put this together, and it took me about a year to put this together, us to put it together, is I literally emailed and called employees that were no longer with us that answered this way. And then I asked a few of our employees that were still with us, relatively new, that answered this way. And if I didn't know who they were, I would talk to the manager, Tina in Cincinnati and so on, to find out a little bit more. And almost without exception, the common denominator of the person that answered A, someone is always late to work and management never does anything about it. That's your gossip, drama king and queen of all time. That's what my data showed. That's the human beings that I talked to or found out about. And so that's the data. And then the next thing I do is, what's my gut tell me, right? So why is that the data? And I think it's simple. I think if I was to tell you that if you hire me, I'm going to be worried and it's going to piss me off on what somebody else is doing or not doing, I'm probably going to run my mouth about it if it pisses me off. And what do we call that? We call that gossip, and gossip's drama. That's one of the number one questions that I ask that uncovers an awful lot for me.
All right, what's number two?
In our industry, especially in any company, drama and gossip is probably the worst evil enemy cancer that goes through a company and kills your culture. It just kills your culture. And it's hard to come back from that. That employee is a nightmare.
What's your number two?
Number two is right here. On a scale from 1 to 10, rate your luck in life. Rate your luck in life. And I did some data on this, and literally at Blue Sky Services, at least, and a little bit, I used to ask this with my old company. Those that answered under a 6, with 2 exceptions, and I'll touch on that in a minute. Those that answered on a 1 through 10 in life, my luck is under a 6. They last about 3 to 4 months with the company before they leave, and that's it. And what we found out about that was, not only are they not going to last very long, but the reason behind that is, and you might be able to guess this, is it's woe is me. They take no ownership in what their choices are. If this is the employee where you go, hey, Fred, Mr. Smith's complaining about his windows, and so did Mrs. Jones and Fred. And Fred's answer to that is, I don't know what they're talking about. He starts blaming the customers. He's got 20 customers complaining, but it's not his fault. He can't make it to work, but it's not his fault. The car broke down, this happened, that happened. This person is the walking, I don't take any responsibility, and he's a nightmare employee, or she is. And that's it. The 2 exceptions, because we do ask them to explain why they answer that way. And the 2 exceptions are, one is every now and again we'll get somebody that I call a one-off. Normally things are great, but my mom just passed away from cancer, or my kid just, I found out is autistic. Something like that's a one-off that we don't penalize them for that in our scoring system. The other one is we get this, and we think this is the best answer. We'll get somebody that either, it's normally like they score a 5 or they score a 0, but in the explanation, they say something to the effect of, I don't believe in luck. I believe in working my ass off, and I get what I deserve. And sometimes I don't, and that's okay. That's the best answer. That's a dude that takes ownership, or that's a lady that takes ownership, and they're going to be a plow horse for you. So those are my 2 favorite.
I like it. Dom, what do you got? What's your go-to pre-screen?
So I'm trying to pull up my app so I can figure out which one I think was the best one that I like. I think you guys use this one too, very similar to this. It's what would you consider a bad start of the workday? And we've got a couple different options as far as, like, because I don't know about your guys' cleaning company, but we have like teams occasionally, and sometimes the teams can get mixed up. So one of the answers is, you get a team member that you're really not too fond of. We also have company vehicles. So you get a car that's not your best car that you like, or like another option is, the start of your workday, you have trouble, with transportation. So like either you get a flat tire or something happens that way.
Yeah.
So all of those things are things that are going to happen.
Right.
But just like you guys, we're rating it based on the answers that we're kind of looking for. I do have a question for you though, a follow-up question. You guys mentioned those are your pre-screening questions. So do you ask those questions to every single person that applies?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
And that's a good point, because the one thing that I am very hardcore on is I want to treat every applicant that comes to me the exact same. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you come from. I don't care what your background is. I don't care if you're high school diploma or you're a master's degree. You're going to answer the same questions as every other human being that comes to me and wants a job with us. Absolutely. Yeah. We need to be consistent on that. Number one, because it's fair. But number two, the questions are so good to uncover things that otherwise you wouldn't be able to find out, both strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
That I think it's important to ask everybody the same thing to get the right results that you can figure out. That's the right answer. That's the right answer. Because if you don't do that, emotions can start to play. And I always bring this example. I'll never forget. I had somebody that came in that had the same name of somebody from high school that used to piss me off. And so it's like, well, you can't hire
like
somebody.
The reason I broke up with my last girlfriend.
Yeah, exactly. It was my girlfriend indeed. She smacked me around a little bit. I didn't like it, so I didn't hire her. But I try to take all the emotion out of it. I like the emotion when you get them hired. Emotion's good, but I don't like it when you have to, find out who to interview and hire.
So So Dom asked a follow-up question, but Dom, I want to ask you a follow-up question. So when you ask them like a way they don't want to start the day, are you doing it with like multiple choice? Is it open-ended? What's the answer that you're looking for?
The answer that I want them to have a bad day on, not a bad day, just the start of their bad day.
Yeah.
I would say because for our company, those other options, like the working with another crew member, different cars, stuff like that, those are likely going to happen.
Yeah.
Often. Okay. So really what I'm looking for them to answer is the flat tire, actually. If you got a flat tire, that might be a rough, because I mean, honestly, I'll be honest, if I had a flat tire when I go out here and go to the office in the morning, it's going to piss me off for a hot second. Now it won't mess up my whole day, but it will be a rough start to the beginning of the work day. And I think most people would answer that way if they're honest with themselves.
Yeah. And you think about that. That's a great answer, actually, because it relates to they're probably pissed off, not just because they got a flat tire, but they're pissed off because they're not getting to work. They're not making money, and they're not taking care of customers. That's what they're pissed off about.
100%. Yeah.
And that's a good reason to be pissed off. Not taking care of customers. I'm not getting paid, and I'm not getting to work.
And one of my questions, the reason why I asked you about the screening thing is because for our company, we do the same process for every single person too. So it wasn't to say that we don't do it that way, but the way that I look at screening questions, and it could just be a terminology thing, our screening questions are more of a knockout question. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and that really just helps us save time on our hiring process. So, a lot of our screening questions would be like, hey, do you got valid driver's license, valid to work in the United States, all that good stuff. And then if they don't answer those questions correctly, and it might be only like 5, quick knockout questions, they don't answer those questions correctly, we don't let them go further in our application.
Yeah. Good point. No, there is a difference between knockout questions and pre-screening. So you're right. Good point. If you don't have a driver's license and you need to, or you can't, or you're not authorized to work in the United States and you need to be, we don't let them go any further either.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
And that's out of respect for their time and ours, right?
Yeah.
So that's a good point. That's a really good point. Maybe a lot of people don't do that out there. I don't know. If anybody out there's got any other super cool questions to ask that we're not thinking about or talking about.
You're doing my job, Shawn. What are you doing?
Well, I know.
My job.
I don't know if you're watching
audience.
TV.
I get to ask audience.
You look like you're watching like a rerun of Columbo or something.
Wait.
I don't know if you know.
Wait. Okay, so if you're sitting out there and you got any good pre-screens or assessment questions, put them in the comments so we can acknowledge it and talk about them.
Rock and roll.
You're taking my job, Shawn. You're making me feel bad about myself. Wait, and also, Dom, you got what's your number 2 go-to pre-screen?
I'm trying. Let me see if I can pull one up here.
I'm not letting you off the hook. I gotta get.
So here's one of my screening questions actually. So we have part-time people because like I said, we do commercial work, and then we've got people that are working 35, 40 hours a week. So one of the questions that I have is how many hours would satisfy you each week? Okay. And then we give a range. So 15 hours or less, 40 hours. Now, depending on the job position they're applying for, that answer that I'm looking for varies. Because if I'm giving, like, we have night people that the job will only give you 20 hours a week. There's no chance in hell that you're going to get 35, 40 hours, period. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the question on that, it says, how many would satisfy you? And some people will literally answer 40 or more hours. Well, this isn't the job for you, because you're never going to get that with this job position. And we even put the answer of that in the job description. It tells you how many hours you're going to get. And then when they answer the question, they're saying, I want 40 hours plus. So that's one of the questions we ask.
Do you then like, hey, you're applying for the commercial job. Why don't you apply for our residential job where that's a possibility? Or at that point, are you like, you can't even read what the hell you applied for, so you're wasting my time. I'll find somebody else.
You know what? I guess it depends on how much. I'm not gonna say how much time I've got recruiting, but how much time I want to spend on recruiting at that moment. Yeah. If I'm looking for a candidate, like right now, when we're, don't have a lot of work going on because all we're doing commercial and corporate accounts, this is the time where we can spend that little extra time on truly looking for those A players, So if there is someone that, answered a question this way, and that answer would have been better for a different position in our company, yeah, we will reach out to them via text message, of course, and say, hey, I see that you applied for this position. It looks like you're looking for 40 hours or more. Have you looked at our career page to see our other job opportunities? Here's one for you. And it would be really cool if there was something out there that could, just recommend those within your company. They answer that question. You say, hey, this is a position we recommend for you.
Nice.
Absolutely. So what do you do? What's your thinking? Because you started off with retention and culture and things like that. Mm-hmm. You didn't always have assessment questions probably that you do today, or that intensive questions and pre-screening that you have today. What once you did put those things together, and even maybe coupled with your culture and getting that culture to where you needed to be with the environment at your company, what happened with your retention even outside of the culture change? So in other words, once you implement the assessments, the correct pre-screening or good pre-screening, did that help your retention even before the culture stuff? Or I get the culture stuff's a huge thing, but I know at least when we put this together, we really didn't do much with training. We didn't do a hell of a lot with employee engagement. We didn't, and retention was pretty much improved just from the assessments and pre-screening we did up front.
Okay. So I would say the assessments definitely, you want me to just answer about the retention or what it helped me do overall?
Both.
Okay. So as far as retention, it definitely assisted with that as far as, allowing people to stay with our company a little bit longer. Culture, I think, put it all together.
Yeah.
But with the assessments, the main thing I saw is we had more people. We had a higher attendance rate at our actual interviews.
Yeah.
Once we're actually putting them through that process, we had a higher attendance rate. And then the other thing is we hired more of the people we interviewed. So it wasn't just me blocking off 4 hours of my day and doing, 10 interviews and saying, oh man, really one of those was okay.
Yeah.
We were getting more people with our face-to-face interactions where we were like, oh, this person exactly. I thought this person would be great. I'm going to hire him. It was like, we would have days where, because when I was doing the interviews, I don't do much of the interviews anymore, but it was more of where it's like, oh my gosh, I did 5 interviews today and they're all pretty good. You know, I want to hire most of them, you know? So then it was kind of just a competition on who do I really want to bring on the team, because I took them through those steps. And when I was actually meeting them, they were really qualified candidates.
Yeah. That's what we found too. Our no-shows drastically reduced.
Mm-hmm.
It's not perfect. We still every now and again get a no-show, but drastically reduced our no-shows. And the other thing I always talk about too is, to your point, I can't tell you how many times in the past I'd have finally somebody show up.
Mm-hmm.
And then the dude or the chick in front of me, I'm looking, going, in 10 seconds, I'm going, there's no way on God's green earth this human being's getting in front of a client. But I go through the motions. I'm like, tell me about this. Waste 20 minutes of my life.
We'll follow up for sure.
Yeah. We'll give you a call. You know, my people will call you. Yeah, I hated that. I hated that worse than a no-show. I really did. Sitting there going through the motions, and there's no way this dude's getting in front of a client of mine. There's no way.
Yeah.
You know, and then it's a nightmare. I hated it. So just that, this stuff, I'm to a point where I get questions from people about, well, what can you help me with, like how to interview? What interview questions should I ask? And I'm like, I'm not real good at that, because I do it all up front. I literally 90 to 95% of the people that show up to an interview, we hire. And it takes 10 minutes to interview them because of the way, and literally what I do, I don't do this anymore, but what I would do and what our managers do that interview is they literally will go back to the questions and say, you answered this way. Can you tell me why? You answered this way. And if it, one of the things I tell people is go back to the questions and the assessments, go back to the resume, and that's it. And all you need to do is say, hey, can you tell me about loyalty? Because that's one of the questions we ask them, to describe what it means to be loyal. And I just want to make sure what they answered when they filled out that application for us matches what they're answering in an interview. Because if it does, that's ingrained into their system. That's their constitution. That's their values are their values. If they differ, I've got somebody that was bullshitting me on an answer. And I got and they're bullshit in the interview. If it's inconsistent what they did and what they passed and how they got to my interview table, I want to just reconfirm that in the interview pretty much in 10 or 15 minutes. And that's all I think an interview is, if you're doing the upfront stuff correctly anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's your interview process like?
My interview process? So what we do is when they first come in, I can get real detailed here because we're real detailed about our interviews. So when they come in, what we do now is we the person in the front of the office, they sit them down, they ask them if they want any water or soda or anything. That's really important that we try to make them feel as comfortable as possible before the actual interview. And then once they're there, they're chilling, we'll call them back into the conference room, and our interview process is probably 15 minutes. Usually we don't spend too much time having a conversation. And most of the time it's more of them asking additional questions that, really just kind of see what kind of questions they have about the job and see how much, interest they really are into it. And then we do the same thing, just kind of follow up and confirm everything that we asked on that application stage matches what they're going to say in person. That's really all it is. It's really just to get a face to everything we've been talking about.
And you and I have talked about this too, and how I'm a sales guy too. I've been doing it for sales for 30 years, and I'm a sales guy. And one of the best salespeople I know are the ones that shut their mouth and listen.
Yeah.
And sales and marketing is so much like recruiting. You're going after a human being that's going to make you money and they're going to make you happy.
Yep.
And now, was I talking sales or was I talking about an employee? I'm talking about both, right? And that's what you need to go after. It's the same concept. And I know, too many times in interviews I used to, and too many people do this. You're running your mouth. You're talking about the business. You're selling the business. They don't need you to sell the business. They're interviewing. What do you think? They're interviewing to say no?
Yep.
And so many people, and I used to do that. We do this, we do that. And it's like, I used to, when I was more involved in the day-to-day stuff with the the cleaning business, I'm more into recruiting now, but I used to always tell the managers, ask a question and be quiet. And and it's got to be open-ended. I don't want a yes or no. I want an open-ended question, and I want them to talk, and I want them to talk and talk, because they uncover their strengths and weaknesses when they talk, not when you talk.
Yeah. The other thing too that we do, and I try to tell everybody this, like I always like to have something to look forward to. Yeah. So like, me, I like to travel. So every time I'm done with, one trip, I like to schedule another one, even if it's 2 months out, because I'm the type of person that likes to look forward to something. So for us, when we're doing an interview, we don't want to give everything that we offer right then, right? There's been so many people that we hire, and then once they get to the onboarding meeting, which is with the admin, that now the admin person is telling them, yeah, we pay for birthdays, we've got holiday pay. They're like, oh my gosh. So if they already accepted the job without knowing all of that stuff, and then you unload all of this after you gave them the job position, now you're giving them even more added value. So we try not to give everything at that job interview.
And again, that's just like sales. How many salespeople do you know that oversell, that tell you, I'm going to do this, and the expectations are up to here. Yeah. And then the cleaning staff goes in, does exactly what we trained them to do. And the guys say, I thought they were going to clean the windows and my grill and my patio furniture and get my mail and trim my dog's nails. It's like, whoa. And that's how recruiting is. That's exactly right. It's true. The same gig. Dan, how's Colombo doing? Are you on, what rerun you on there? I can't hear you. Are you on mute?
I'm just an observer. I'm just a conscientious observer, man. So I do. It's not an accident. This is like, I've just been waiting for the right time to ask this question, but it's not an accident that you have a $1 million plus business. So I don't want to ignore that fact. That's what a lot of people in the service industry are shooting for. And it takes time. Like you said, you've been in it for about a decade. If you could do it all over again, what's like the one thing that you would do differently where you're like, yeah, if I would have done that differently from the get-go, I'd have been at $1 million in half the time. And maybe this is like the same answer, but what is that like mission critical thing? If you had to give one piece of advice to any service business owner out there, whether it's commercial cleaning, residential cleaning, maid service, lawn care, pressure washing, whatever it is, what would be the thing you tell a new business owner to help them get to $1 million?
That's a good question. I would say I definitely would think it would be get your recruiting on point early. And I know that's a lot of stuff, because recruiting is not just posting a job and things like that. I would say it's getting your recruiting on point. But then the other thing is, which doesn't really relate to assessments and whatnot. It's, yes, get in love with your culture, but don't let that hinder you from getting rid of someone out of your company. So just a quick scenario, is, once one of my managers, would say, well, this person's been with us, 2 years, but the thing is they were a terrible employee now. They weren't the same employee that we had 2 years ago. Right. Yeah. And we got so in love with retention. We got so in love with like, oh my God, I want to have these people here for 2 years, this person here for a year. We got so in love with that, and so in love with, trying to build a good culture, that we would keep people that didn't need to be here anymore.
Yeah.
And that really hindered our company. We lost big accounts because, we didn't get rid of this person 6 months ago. 6 months ago, if we got to get rid of that person, they wouldn't have left, this employee upset. They wouldn't have left this door unsecure, all of those different things. Right. So now we hire like we do now, but we also fire much quicker because, we just can't, we can't sit around and, keep people just because we want to have a nice retention rate.
So to drill into that, I kind of asked the same question twice, but if you were going to do it all over again and try to get to $1 million faster, you think is it more of just getting a recruiting system up and running sooner to like get the right people faster? Or is it, and maybe it kind of goes together, but just firing the wrong people faster once you know they're wrong?
Both, man. I can't. I don't think I could choose, because you know how it is. You hire someone and you think they're great and everything's great for 2 or 3 months, but then you don't want to let that person go. So I think it's both. I think they play hand in hand, because in that sense, the only way that you're going to have the willpower to just terminate someone is if your recruiting's on point, because you know that you can replace that person in a day. You know. So I think it's
hard
really
to have the confidence to fire somebody if you don't have the confidence to hire somebody.
I mean, because think about it, we don't want to go out and clean, you know. So what happens is, you know, we're like, oh my God, I don't want to get rid of them, because if I do, I'm cleaning tomorrow.
There's one thing that that I've been asked before, and it's the same question, kind of, Dan, that you asked Dom, and that's my answer was, twofold. One is being candid. Jack Welch, one of the biggest things he would tell managers is you need to be candid. What a crime it is if you're not candid with an employee, that in the back of your mind, or maybe you're chatting to one of your managers that you're going to get rid of them, or we need to get rid of them or her, but you haven't had that open, candid discussion with that employee. So I think being candid with employees is critical. Yeah. And I think not just that, but one of the things I used to love, and I miss it dearly, the day-to-day stuff, it was having tough conversations with employees. I know that sounds weird, and tough conversations wasn't your attendance sucks. That's an easy conversation.
Yeah.
This is a fact. You don't come to work, I got to get rid of you. Okay. But it was more like that employee that, like you said, Dom, you hired, they were great for a year and something's going on. Things change in people's lives. We don't hire people that have $50,000 in their bank account, driving brand new Mercedes, and their life is, charities. We hire people that have problems sometimes, right? And number one, that can change. And whether it's a guy or a gal, and they start dating somebody, and all of a sudden things change. I've had employees that were great for 3 years and got hooked on junk. All right, they're hooked on heroin, and I'm going, wait a minute here. This is a different human being. Yeah. And so you've got some tough conversation to have with that. Yeah. There's some loyalty that was there. And all of a sudden, this person's gone through something that changed overnight, seemingly, because they'll fool you for a while. You'll fool yourself for a while. And the longer that happens, the worse it gets. So it's so important to have a candid conversation right away and not be afraid to, you know what, you need to go for the good of you. And I've done that before too. And I used to like those tough conversations, because there's a lot of, there's a handful of people that really stand out where, that was a situation. They went away and then they came back when, hey, you need to get a hold of this person specifically. This person will help you get through this problem. Whatever whether it was addiction, whether it was, I got kicked out of my apartment, whatever it is, I used to try to find somebody that could help them if I couldn't, whether it was a rehab place or whatever. And I can't tell you how many times that person would come back a year later. And I remember one distinctively, and a few. And I think that's just important, but you'll never know that without having that candid conversation. One of
the things that we did, and this is kind of a culture thing too, that we did, is we started doing one-on-ones with people. And it was just a straightforward conversation. It wasn't necessarily about, how work was going. How's everything else going? How's life going? Obviously, everyone's was different, because you do have some of your employees that are all put together and they don't really have a lot of crazy drama going on, but you got a lot of them that do. And that went great for a while. But then what we started to see was that some people weren't comfortable unloading some of this stuff, So then what we did was we started switching the one-on-ones up. We said, okay, maybe you're not the best person to do this one-on-one with this applicant. I mean, this employee. Yeah. Maybe it needs to be a different manager. So we started doing that, and we started noticing a change in a lot of those good employees being here for a year, 2 years, and then all of a sudden they're a whole new person. We knew what was going on, you know?
Yep.
Mhm.
And with all this said, now we've got all this, and you go back to those assessment questions.
Mhm.
And if you can ask assessment questions that uncover those things,
Yep.
and a while back I said, wouldn't it be nice to know what somebody's problem or complaint's going to be before you hire them?
Oh yeah.
And so you can uncover a lot of that. But I mean, life changes. Somebody's answers might be, what their life is today, but life's changed. But so with that said, so let's go back to this is automation. This is automation too, not just assessment.
Mhm.
So we've got some assessment questions. We got a ton of applications that come in. One of the problems that we used to have, and what a lot of our recruiting clients have on our recruiting business, is that it wasn't so hard to get a bunch of applications. It was just hard to find the gold nugget. How do I get through 300 applications and there's only 2 good ones in here?
Yeah.
Most business owners don't have time to do that. Then
Yeah.
on top of that, okay, all of us are talking about, you got to ask these 30 assessment questions before you even talk to this human being.
Yeah.
You need to do these things. So I can't get through the applications. If I luck out and find 2 or 3 or 4 out of 200, then you're telling me I got to ask 30 assessment questions and then 40 pre-screening. How do automation has to play a role, or you're going to be
Yeah.
left behind in this industry.
Yeah.
Or you're certainly not going to be $1 million company, maybe at all, let alone very quickly. So talk a little bit about automation and some of the stuff that you have going on. And you feel free to talk about what you've done with HireWho.
Okay.
And talk a little bit about that.
Okay. So one of the things that we were speaking about was, remember I said, are those pre-screening questions or knockout questions, things like that. So what we do for my hiring process is we've got those, pre-screening questions where they answer, do they have a valid driver's license, all that good stuff. And if for some reason they don't answer those pre-screening questions correctly, they're knocked out. They're kicked out. So
you're talking automation though, not knocked out like somebody you're on the phone going through all this.
No. So they answer these questions. The system analyzes those answers, and if they're not a good candidate, the system's automatically going to let them know that. It's going to send them an email, send them a text message and says, hey, thank you for applying. Unfortunately, you're not a right fit at this time. And I think, and just to add this, I think that's really important that you communicate with every applicant, whether you're going to hire them or not hire them. And then secondly, we'll ask more in-depth questions as far as, the details that you need for an applicant anyway. And then we go into the more of the assessment portion that you're talking about. And after they answer that assessment, if they get a score that we're looking for, so sometimes we're only looking for 80%, maybe we're looking for 90%, just kind of depends on that job. If they're getting the assessment score that we're looking for, then it'll automatically push them to the next stage of our hiring process, which is like a phone screen. And that phone screen, my software, it allows that applicant to schedule their phone screen automatically too, based on your availability.
So let me ask this. So you get, somebody clicks on Indeed or wherever, they go fill out an online application, which you don't do a thing. It's already set up. They hit it, and it's similar to what we do. And then they go automatically through assessments and some questions to assess a score. And that's what we do. And then we don't, where we differ, and neither is right or wrong, we don't bother with phone interviews anymore. We used to kind of do that, or if we were stuck, and we would do that if we were in a hurry. So
if you're quarantined.
so that's actually a good thing, because we haven't been doing phone screens until the last 2 weeks again. So we used to do them, we stopped doing them, but we're doing them again now because of the virus.
And so with that said, I can't tell you how many people I've talked to in different, not just business, but this, it's kind of like 9/11 was, where life changed in America. All right. You go to the airport, things changed in America after 9/11. American life is going to change after this virus goes away in a few months to in 3 years, we're going to be doing things. And I'm thinking there's still going to be things that we can do remotely. And so I'm starting to think differently about, maybe doing a Zoom interview, or, I think you were talking about how do you handle like that phone, or do you do any type of, Zoom type interviews, or is it phone interviews, or what do you do?
Yeah. So like I was mentioning, this was earlier, but so let's say we didn't have the phone screen, say we didn't want to do those, and we didn't have all this time on our hands right now with the virus. So one of the ways that we would automate it is we would say, okay, we're going to send you a link where you can actually record a 5-minute video of yourself just introducing yourself, because really the phone screen is more just to get a voice on the person, get a feel, on if it's a real applicant, how serious are they about it. So we could set it up to where they would do a video, and then we could just look at that video of the qualified candidates. So even if 100 people apply, based on the screening, the assessment, only 10 people may actually be able to record a video.
Right.
Only 10 or 5 people may actually only be able to actually schedule a phone interview, because we've eliminated all of those applicants on the front end.
Yeah.
So that's what we're seeing, the power of automations, because we're spending less time dealing with those applicants. So you asked me something about, if a person didn't answer that question right on that assessment, would I go in there and recommend them a different job? So I could do that, but it actually takes a lot of time, because they're automatically in a pool that says, Dom, these people aren't qualified for you because they didn't answer all these questions the way that you're visioning, So I would literally have to manually go and do that, because, we're getting rid of all of those candidates in a different pool. So
I gotta, as co-host here, let me we got comments. We got Candace Greathouse came in and gave you about 1 billion hearts, Shawn. So you owe Candace like some flowers or something. I don't know what, when somebody gives you 1 billion hearts, I don't know what to do. Dean threw out a good question for you guys.
Candace is awesome.
So Dean says, for a sales position, hearts. Candace, what, like, Shawn, I'm gonna keep this PG-13. Why the hell are you hearting Shawn's recruiting page? And I didn't see any hearts from you on Bookkeeping Beer and BS. That's some bullshit. All right.
Hey, her husband and Candace and I go back about 1.5 years. So you haven't known them as long as I have.
Right. Okay. So Dean says, for a sales position, and I'm gonna have Dom go first on this one. Would you rather get paid? So it's like, would you rather get paid? But I think let's put it in this context, Dean, and I apologize for spinning your question here. But if you're gonna go hire a salesperson, how are you gonna frame this? Would you rather pay a guaranteed base pay, lower commission, or no base pay, higher commission pay?
Okay, so I'm so glad I get to answer this first, because I have a salesperson for my cleaning company. And the way that we pay is a mediocre base pay, okay, and a pretty decent commission. So we pay, I want to say it's like 24 a year base, okay, and then it's 10% commission on every single cleaning that happens. So what it means is, if they sell
for how long? Can I
for a year? For a year.
Okay.
So if they sell a $200 monthly service, then they're going to get 10% of that every single month for the first year. And then once that client's in that second year, that renewal commission drops down. Okay. So in my past life, I was an insurance agent. So that's where I got that commission plan from. So here's what's going to happen with this guy. This sales guy's been with us for about 6 months. Last month, March, he generated, I want to say 15 grand in revenue. Okay. Now that may not sound like a lot, but think of it this way. In a year, he's projected to do $30,000 just on his book of business every month. Okay. He's literally created his own business inside of my company. That's how he's doing it. And, he's definitely going to make, $100K. I think for a salesperson, if you're looking to hire a salesperson, you have to set it up to where they're going to be able to make a boatload of money. but you have to be able to give them a base to where they can actually get started and live on the ramp up.
Yeah. And I concur wholeheartedly with what Dom said. And that is, it's, and again, the market's a little bit different now. It might be a little bit different, but 3 months ago, I had a lot of people looking to recruit salespeople, and with basically 100% commission or draw and this and that. And I'm going, this market, if I'm a salesperson, I'm not taking that job no matter what. There's just too many other opportunities at larger companies that are just begging people to sell for them. Mm-hmm. And that was the nature of that labor market. Now I think it might be a little bit different. Mm-hmm. Because I've got a lot of those salespeople that I was trying to recruit for my customers in our recruiting division that are coming back to me going, "Hey, is that job in Atlanta, that power washing company still available? Is Josh Taylor still hiring salespeople over in Baltimore?" And all so it depends on the market as far as that, but in the same respect, it shouldn't be that way. A salesperson needs to have room to make tons of money, but they have to be secure too, at least at the start. And that's a tough thing for a small business to offer. It really is. So, if it can't work into your financial business model, and Dan, you might be able to talk about this certainly better than I can. As far
finance, let's talk finance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does a small business, because I struggled with that when I owned my own company before, I got with Blue Skies. That was, I'd love to hire 30 salespeople to go out and make me $1 zillion. Who wouldn't? But let's start with one. How do I pay somebody, or how do I guarantee a salesperson that is going to be a decent to good salesperson, security enough to say, yeah, I'll sign that agreement with you to get hired, and you're guaranteeing a little bit to go forward? That's a tough thing. I mean, that was something you struggled with a little bit with us, let alone, all the things we've talked about. And the industry, especially, Dan's more geared towards the exterior cleaning stuff, window cleaners, power washers, and so on. That's a big thing that was happening before the virus crisis was happening. So many in our industry were looking for salespeople, but how do you formulate that to get somebody secure enough to start with? And Dom, you were able to do that, but a lot can't guarantee $25,000 a year, or at least they don't think they can. Yeah. Dan, what's your insight on that?
I like the model of paying a draw for a period of time to let them build their confidence, to understand their product and service that they're selling, but they also need to be able to earn it off. And so I like the concept of paying a draw for a period of time.
Can you define what that is? Because there's a lot of people that don't understand what that means.
Yeah.
True. So paying them like a weekly, or however often your payroll is. Let's say you pay them a $500 or $600 a week base pay, and it's a draw because they have to earn it back. So as they start selling and generating commission, it starts eating away at this bank that you've created for them. Once they've paid all of that back, then they start earning commission on top of it. And so creating a draw system where maybe you say you're going to draw $600 a week for 10 weeks. So you're going to draw $6,000. I'm making a $6,000 investment for you. And at the end of that 10 weeks, you can decide, every business is going to be different, whether it's exterior cleaning, interior cleaning, commercial, residential, whatever it is. Every business is going to be different, but deciding if it's 4 weeks, 10 weeks, however long of a draw you're going to give them to invest in them, and say, like, at X point, you either need to have that draw totally worked off, or you need to be halfway to earning that draw off for me to feel confident that you can go out and sell this thing.
So that's the financial guy's business model of how to make it work for the business. How does that fit? I mean, did you find that a hard sale for a sales guy or lady to buy into, or no?
I think if they're a confident salesperson, they look at that and say, like, I'm going to eat that for lunch. Not like, but I appreciate, like, it gives me time to understand what I'm selling. A salesperson can sell anything, but they still need to understand it, right? But sales is a really specific skill set, and it transitions usually pretty well from one thing to the next. Services and products may be a little bit different, but if somebody's confident at getting up in front of people and knows how to sell, they're going to look at that and say, like, all right, I've got a baseline, but at least it gives me time to get going. And I'm going to need some time to build relationships. I'm going to need time to, like, hone in my talking points and my craft. And I'm taken care of, and you're putting the risk on me to learn that. And that gives me a head start. Yeah. So I think in our industry that works well. I don't think in every industry that works well, but I think giving them that head start, and it also gives you time. And like in 2 or 3 weeks, you might be able to say, nope, like this ain't going to work. They haven't started working off that draw at all. Maybe they don't pay the whole thing by like week 3 or week 4, depending on how your commission structure is set up. But it lets you start assessing them pretty quick to see how much of that draw they're.
And so, Dom, I'll bring you back into this because this is interesting because, you know, if we which we never do, but if we kind of stay on topic a little bit, it does relate back into the assessments because we do assessments and pre-screening and have completely somewhat different questions for sales positions. And that's part of our recruiting service, that we have to do that. Mm-hmm. We don't have to, but we do. You're not hiring salespeople every month, but did you do anything differently as far as assessing a salesperson, or was it not that much different really?
So actually it was completely different. Yeah. I kind of lucked out. I got really lucky because it was a guy that I used to work with when I worked at Verizon. Okay,
so it was different. Yeah.
So I kind of knew how he was trained because I know how Verizon trains their salespeople. So I kind of knew, and it was just more of a relationship building type of thing. We talked about it for a couple months, and then we built out the compensation plan and how it would work. So he didn't necessarily go through the process of what I would normally go through to hire someone, but I will say, due to the fact that model has worked out really good, when we do go out and start duplicating in other markets, we will have, honestly, for a salesperson, we'll probably go even further than just an assessment. Yeah. We'll probably do a disc and everything to really understand the personality.
And that's one of the things that we do. And we'll wrap this up kind of soon here because it's getting late. But this is an example of a psychological or disc type of profile that we do on top of the pre-screening questions that are very industry specific.
Okay.
And so we've got achievement, striving, emotional stability, integrity, and optimism. This actually is for a cleaning technician, but we also have things that we ask for sales people, sales assessments, customer service assessments. So there's a lot of things that we do with that for our clients and for the salespeople that we've hired that are more geared towards that. Like you just touched on was sort of like that DISC profile or a psychological or personality assessment. And I think that's another part of it, is not just the pre-screening questions that we ask that are pertinent to our industry, but there's still some things that you want to uncover about how optimistic somebody is, what they're, are they have a high level of integrity, and some other achievement of striving is huge for sales, right? And there's other things that play a role into that. And that's another part of it. Do you guys do this type of DISC profiling or personality assessments with what you're doing, or no?
Do I do it currently with my cleaners, or is it in your software?
Either.
So I don't do that with my cleaners. But yes, we do offer that a capability to do that if you were on the platform. Yes.
Okay.
It's just the integration.
Yep.
All
right. I'm pretty warped out here. I don't know if you guys have anything else to add. Dan, I know you do.
Hey, Dan, can I say one thing on top of what Dan said about the sales thing really quick?
Absolutely.
And I'll be done. If you're looking to hire a salesperson, because you pretty much said it, Dan, but what we did was, before we hired them, I came up with a number that I was willing to invest, whether that was $10,000 or $12,000.
Yep.
And I said, hey, if I lose this 10 grand, then it doesn't matter. It's just the investment I got to make in this salesperson. So I had that in mind. I didn't necessarily tell my candidate though, what was like, where was the peak? Where did you have to start being profitable to really, make it to where I don't need you no more? We did also include a ramp up period. So like for the month 1 and month 2 and month 3, we paid additional in the base to make it to where, like, okay, if I want this person to make $4 grand a month, then for month 1, I'm going to pay them that. For month 2, I'm going to lower that, ramp up a little bit. And month 3, I'm going to lower it. And then month 4, it's just going to be that base, So I think, because someone commented on here that they're paying their guy only commission and they're crushing it, which is great. If you can get someone like that, I think that's amazing. But I also think that by paying base, because I have done the commission only thing too before, but by paying base, you let them know that you're a little invested in them also. And I think a good candidates love that.
The other thing too, it depends, I think, on what your marketing system is. If whoever's paying 100% commission spends, $7,000 a month generating leads for the salesperson to follow up on that. So there's a whole mess of things. It depends on how much you have to invest overall in the marketing, plan that you have for your business. If you told me that I'd make X amount of dollars and all I have to do is follow up on the leads you gave me, and I didn't have to generate my own, that's a wholly a whole different thing than if I have to cold call or if I have to, generate those leads. So it all depends. It really does. But if it matches your culture and you assess the people properly and your expectations match the expectations you told them it would be.
Yeah.
I think that's a big key. And I think we talked an awful lot about that, and hopefully it helped some people out, or made some people think out there, because it's it's so I remember when I had my professional house cleaning, my cleaning business. It was culture was all over the place. Until you get the systems down and get your culture down and literally assess people like we're talking about, I don't think there's enough companies that take it seriously, that you need to take the time, invest the time to ask 30 or 40 questions. And I always tell our clients this, and we do it with our own company. I know more about a human being than most of their family does and their friends do, and I've never communicated with them yet because of my assessment questions, my personality assessments, the things that we make somebody go through to earn a spot at our interview table. I don't talk to them. Nobody in our company talks to them until they get to the interview table. Right. And I know more about that human being than most of their family does. And I think that's an important thing to put together. And if you don't have some sort of automation to do that, what's the name of your company that you started, Dom, real quick, that automates those types of things?
HireWho.
HireWho. If you need any questions about automation with that, message Dom. What we do is something very similar to what Dom does with recruiting, except we manage the entire thing for you. And Dom has a great system that you can go to him and he'll get you set up with it. If you're so busy that you're marketing and you're trying to get to that $1 million or $2 or $3 million, you're going to need me and our staff to manage it for you. Whether it's Dom's or what we're already doing or whatever, we'll do that for you. If that doesn't, if that's something that you're not willing to invest with or can't, that's fine. Take whatever we talked about tonight, implement it with your company. If you want to chat, I'm sure Dom will raise his hand to this. I've always say this at the end of our Facebook stuff, our Facebook Live stuff is, I love to talk shop. The man Dom is a sales guy, so I know he loves to talk shop. And whether you do anything with our services or not, I don't care. I care, but I don't. I'll talk and I'll walk you through whatever you need to figure out, for your own system, for your own company. And Dom, I'm sure will do the same thing.
100%.
Yep. And that's it. Anything else?
So I dropped the link to HireWho down in the comments. I think I see people do this when they're like good at social media stuff. They always like point down. So
Ty Lopez and people like that, right?
yeah, down there, comments. So I got the link down there. Oh, I should probably put the yourblueskies.com link in there too. If anybody has any questions, now is the time. You got like 20 seconds.
Real quick, this is off base, but tomorrow I'm going to go live for probably like 3 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. There's going to be some economic numbers coming out with unemployment and employment statistics and through the Labor Bureau that I think are going to be very critical to understand. And I'll try to talk a little bit on it in simple terms because I'm a simple guy. And I'll try to dissect what I see and figure out what that might mean. And I think that's a really important thing as a business owner to know those things. I always thought it was important to know, but if you're not following labor statistic things, I get it. But let me kind of dissect it for you in a couple minutes so you don't have to. And it's critical that you understand your labor market, and especially in these times. There's going to be, is there going to be a few people that are going to file unemployment, or are there going to be another 30 million like there were last week? That's a big thing to understand and know.
It's a big reason to be out there building your list and your hopper.
You got
on HireWho or whatever you're using.
That's right.
Go get them.
All right.
Get them.
That's it, guys. Thanks a lot. And we'll talk soon.
Hey, have a good night, guys.
You too. Bye-bye.
Good night. See you guys.